TV.
Welcome everybody at this new episode of Playgrounds TV, and we have another special guest. He's, I can't say part of the family because he visited us, the art department in Eindhoven in our first edition in 2017, I think already. And he's back in our virtual studio, so it almost feels as if he is at our table. It's the founder of Terraform Studios. It's the one and only Finian McManus. Hey, Finian.
Hey, what's up? Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, we were really looking forward to this meeting again. And unfortunately, these are COVID times. Otherwise, you would be here like physically on our table.
I would love to.
But it's still great to have you here. And it almost feels if you're here sitting. And we had already a little chat, so it feels that you're actually here, which is great. Hey, Finian, we are going to discuss. I had like a really huge amount of imagery that I received from you, so we have a lot to discuss. And I'm just gonna pick the first slide. And my first question would be like, why did you start digital painting? How did you came into the whole concept art scene?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you so much again for having me. I'm honored to be here, and very honored that you guys want to ask me some questions about my process and what I do and everything. So I started designing, digital painting, drawing when I was very young. I was drawing when I was, 6 to 8, just creating my own worlds, imagining science fiction stuff, fantasy stuff, designing everything from characters, vehicles, all inspired by, Star Wars and legendary painters like John Berkey and Star Trek, all those amazing TV shows and movies. Digital painting I got into quite later though. I was doing 3D modeling when I was maybe 16 or 17, but I didn't really start digital painting until I was around 18, when I started at Art Center College of Design, which is in here close to me actually in Pasadena. So it was actually, not until I had already learned how to model and, design stuff in 3D. I had some drawing experience, but I actually had to really catch up on my painting skills when I first got into school because I was very new to it. I didn't really know how to do it at all. But I had just kind of picked up a very basic Wacom, I think it was the Bamboo at the time, and started sketching with it just because the class I was in, they were all fantastic painters. I came at it more from a 3D approach and had to learn how to paint over time.
All right. Hey, and we're watching here a few clips. So do you use like reference material in this, or is it all by hand, or how do you start it up? Or is this part of modeling?
These ones that are up here, these were done, I think, around 3 years ago, back when I was on Avatar, Avatar 2 and 3. And someone at our studio, John Park, who's incredible, I'm sure everybody knows him that's watching, started doing these lunchtime speed paintings. And what we would do is we would all have a subject, for instance, a certain type of plane or vehicle, and everybody in the studio would study that for 1 hour at lunchtime. And it was a really fantastic way to learn about new forms, new methods, to see what everybody else is doing, all these different techniques, and also to have just a little break in the day where you get to study something. So yeah, all these, the ones that we have up now, they're all based on actual things in real life that we were studying, trying to learn about brush efficiency, economy, all those sorts of things, and trying to design, unique imagery and pictures when we're on our break from doing design work. Because at the time we were designing all sorts of, sci-fi, fantasy, hardcore design stuff, could be keyframes or models, and taking that break to do painting in the middle of the day was really refreshing. It's nice to have something that takes you out of, a really thoughtful design workflow where you can just focus on something completely different that can kind of get your mind working in other ways. So that was kind of the purpose of those exercises, was to keep up with our painting skills while we're doing so much design work and 3D modeling and stuff like that.
Right. Hey, I see here like some environment designs. When doing this, like, do you already have like a kind of a composition in mind, or is it like?
When I start sketches like this for this particular series, and oftentimes when I'm really exploring something from the beginning, I will start with a huge amount of references. They could be things from trips that I've gone on, photography that I've taken, could be things that I found online, things that friends have sent to me. And it could just also be based on a piece of writing I've done, maybe a couple paragraphs I've written as a description of an area. And after I have all that together, I start a series of explorations. And sometimes those explorations can be pencil sketches. They could be environments like this where I'm mashing tons of photos and different textures and atmospheres together to create an idea. And it's really just to find a creative exploration of something new, something that, trying to find a different angle, a different palette, a different idea that can fit into something larger. And it isn't until I do a lot of those explorations that I really settle on something that I want to flesh out and explore more. Because for me, the part of the design process where you uncover the most interest and uncover the most unique design is right at the beginning when you're creating something. It's right when you have the idea of okay, this is what I'm going to sell. This is the idea and concept that I'm going to create. Everything past that point, after you've already represented the idea, you've represented the emotion, the feeling, the architecture, it's kind of like rendering. It's like, okay, you're going to express that idea better, but the idea has already been created. And for me, my favorite part of the design process is doing stuff like that that's on the screen. It's really conceptualizing the initial idea of a space or of a design. It's bringing something into creation that hasn't existed before. And then all the rest of it, the rendering, all that stuff that takes place later, even though it's just as important in the process, it's something that I like to do after I've already done a lot of that exploration. So I really know that, okay, I'm proceeding with the most interesting idea possible.
Oh, wow. Hey, and I see that you use like quite a lot of details. How do you keep it still readable? I think when doing this kind of composition, it's easy to make a mesh of it, and then there's like so many info, and everything is like, there are so many little details that you tried out. How do you make it like become one?
So I would say, I feel like when you've been designing for a long time, you kind of accumulate a lot of these little tips and tricks that you've been practicing for your entire career. For instance, when I was a student, if I had a picture of that room I was in when I was a student, I would have sticky notes, posters on the walls, all these different rules about composition and design and lighting that would remind me what I had to do. One of them is always check your values, your black and white. One of them is, always think about the big, medium, and small shape proportions, textural proportions, color proportions, because there's specific ways you can guide the eye naturally that will focus it on I guess, making a picture most efficient for anybody to look at. So there's a way of organizing shapes, values, colors, any information in a way that is the most pleasing to the human eye and the most easy to understand. And it's through practicing those rules over and over and over again throughout years that it kind of becomes baked into your mind in a way where you almost don't have to think about it anymore. Another thing that I do when I'm designing is I squint my eyes. So I look at something from far away and I squint and I try to ask myself, okay, where does my eye go first and second and third? Where do I look when I just naturally, instinctively look in an image? And that's going to tell you a lot about how other people will perceive what you've been designing. Because when a viewer looks at your image for the first time, they are going to have a point of interest that they specifically focus on. And then you can judge, okay, is that actually what I want to say? Is that what I want them to be looking at? And if it's not, you can take the chance to say, okay, I'm going to increase the contrast somewhere else to really get that story moment to stick out or that narrative to show through better. So I think for me, it's the accumulation of all these different rules and tactics to really understand how do you organize a composition in the most efficient way to make any viewer be able to understand what you're trying to say. They should understand within a couple seconds what's actually going on within the image, what the background is, what the narrative is, and what that space is in reality. It shouldn't be something where they have to guess at it. So I hope that kind of helps answer the question a bit.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it sounds a little bit like an athlete who is training to gain some muscle memory so that you don't have to think about, okay, I should make that reflex, but that the reflex comes automatically.
100%. Yeah, I mean, it's a similar thing with perspective. Like you don't just practice perspective with grids so that you use those grids when you're a working professional artist. You don't want to have to plot everything out. But slowly, by doing that same mundane activity over and over again, as an artist, it just kind of coalesces and builds up to a point where you don't have to think about it anymore. It's just kind of a natural, instinctual thing for you.
Yeah, and because you sent me a folder that was like loaded with a lot of imagery. Are you always like drawing? Because this are you still training in that amount of drawings? Because I saw also some recently. So when you're not doing a job, you're always drawing and giving yourself these kind of assignments.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is one of the most important things for any artist to do is to build up their work and style outside of their artwork that's professional. I mean, in our industry, it's very volatile and unpredictable in the way that, you could be working on a project for years and it could get canceled or it could be changed or you might never be able to release anything from it. So in the end, I really believe that the personal work that you show is going to be the most important, not necessarily the stuff that you've worked on professionally. And also the areas where you get the most creative self-exploration, where you really understand who you want to be as an artist, that will happen on your personal time. It's stuff that'll happen when, at the end of the day, you might be a little bit tired, but you have a really good idea you want to explore. And I think nowadays we're really starting to see in the community the value of having your own personal projects, of having your own narratives and ideas and IPs. And I think that now is the time really for artists to spend extra time really exploring that, because that having that ability to have your own story that you can tell, I think even in the future years, that will become much, much more valuable as an artist, because you will have more opportunities to be able to work on things and even, develop your own narratives possibly for payment. So, I do still do a lot of that exploration. I try to learn new stuff all the time. Nowadays, it's also kind of mixed in with business stuff as well. So it's not as solely focused on art and design as I used to, but absolutely, I'm still, trying to learn new stuff as much as I can on my downtime.
Hey, and I saw this one as well. This is, I think, a combination of photo bashing
Yes.
but these are quite complex imagery. What is like the step that you're following? Is it like you will have the photo, of course, but how do you make sure that even though this looks like a really advanced machine, I can still follow the drama in it? What is the first step that you
I'm
do?
glad you like it. Yeah, so for something like this, this was also from a project, I think this was about 4 or 5 years ago now, where it was mainly focused on science fiction imagery. And I did a little bit of a process similar to what we had before, where I have a huge amount of references, say like 200 or 300 images. And I have an idea in my head, okay, I want to design the interior of our laboratory that has some sort of common area and maybe a holographic projection. And just having that frame, that box to be able to work in, it now narrows down all the references that you can apply to that scenario. So from then on, I would start with just a very simple sketch. So a simple painting sketch, and lay in the major shapes that I want the image to have. And I will distort and transform, photo bash anything in there that I think can help with the texture. The other part that I think is really crucial to how I develop these types of imagery is the color and kind of spontaneity that comes from it, where I don't restrict myself to just using reference and photo bash that is specific to that category. I like to throw in completely random things that just have interesting textures. And the reason I do that is that it starts to bring a sense of otherworldliness to what you're designing. Like for instance, this one we have on the screen, the background wall texture in the back on the left, that's I think like a floor tile from a bathroom. That's what it originally was, and then I kind of painted over it to distort it to fit that kind of sci-fi imagery. And having a sensibility where you incorporate these things that you wouldn't normally think about, it's almost in a way using form language. You're taking something that has one purpose and changing it to have a different purpose. It's bringing something new and unique and original to composition in a way that you wouldn't have necessarily designed if you were just drawing it or painting it by hand. It's adding in something that is unexpected, that I think also subconsciously to the viewer gives them this feeling of that there's something more happening, that there's something that's interesting that is going down here, that's a bit different from what they normally expect.
So bringing in this like random kind of textures maybe sometimes just to challenge yourself,
I mean,
keeps you away from cliches or cliche way of thinking.
Absolutely. I would say though that I am purposeful about it. If I bring in those textures, those different sources, I want to know beforehand that they're going to work. You know, I almost always will bring in something where I say, okay, this texture would work great in that area. So I always want to be sure that I'm not wasting too much time with it. But I do think that, you know, even with stuff that I'm doing for professional work on a film, I will try to do that just to bring in something interesting and unique that will separate it out from just a normal 3D render or a normal painting, but something that will elevate it and bring in something that feels different or intriguing or curious somehow, that will make the viewer say, oh, that's, you know, what is that? That looks completely different from something that I've seen before. And for me, that part of painting, incorporating that, you know, spontaneous, strange texture, that's really exciting for me. It's something that I really love doing when I'm painting.
Yeah, I have some examples further on in this interview that also is like referring to what you're just saying with this unusual texturing that you sometimes tend to use. You were discussing a form language, and I think that's quite an important thing. You also make your own tutorials. You also did you're also teaching yourself, so we have a shared passion as well. And then you're talking about like form language, how important it is. And I see like some examples that I have in front of me here. Is like, how do you start off? What is like? What are the things that you say? Okay, form language. It's the same as language. So you want to say something. So how are you defining your letters?
Form language is the communication of form through expression. It's the way I use it, which is a bit different from maybe some other designers. You know, there's many ways to use it. Is I try to take forms that have no relation to each other and try to bridge the gap between them. So taking something that is unrelated, something that has something very unique about it, and finding a way of incorporating that into a piece of architecture or a vehicle or a character, a scene that makes it take on a different appearance. So a good example for that that's used a lot if you were to take a form language class is to use broccoli to inspire architecture or a character design. That's a simple way to use it, where you're analyzing the forms of one object. It doesn't have to be that. It could be you know, a type of wood. It could be a type of fruit or a keyboard, for instance. You're analyzing the shapes and the structure of that and trying to interpret it into something completely different. So if I'm saying a keyboard, for example, it would be analyzing the spaces between the keys. What makes a keyboard a keyboard? How do we as humans recognize the shapes that are on a keyboard? And incorporating that into an environment. And then you have an environment that most likely people have never seen before because it's been completely inspired by something unrelated. And that's a type of design exploration that I like to use a lot, and it's very, very important in I would say, you know, most industries now, the film and game industry, to be able to do that. So these are some very, very old inspirations I did a while ago, but they're very relevant. They're explorations of airships, and these were just like some thumbnail sketches based on cacti. So it was taking a cactus plant and trying to strip away the forms and try to understand, okay, how can I incorporate cactus as a form language into airships or architecture? If there's this society that lives out in the desert, what is a way that they could use these bioorganic materials to build their structures, their cities, their vehicles? How can we incorporate that sort of you know, texture and functionality into their designs? And I think a lot of the time in the industry, when you come to it with that angle of adding something unique and original and being able to explore in a very wide variety of ways, it becomes very appreciated in the industry, because it means that you can kind of adapt to any design challenge that someone will throw at you. You're able to really handle any sort of design responsibly, and you're not going to really be limited because you're challenging yourself constantly by doing these explorations.
Yeah, and I think directors who wants to be, they normally work with an art department and with concept artists to be inspired and to gain ideas, right? So
yes,
if they gain great ideas, it probably will make their story and their world building better.
absolutely.
So these kind of little, sometimes it looks like little elements, but are really important if you want to create a world, because those kind of elements, they make this world coherent. Am I correct if you're doing
Oh,
that?
you're totally correct. And oftentimes you even have the ability to inspire more than just the director's vision, but that the designs you do can often influence the script. It could influence what gets included. For instance, recently I did a pass of 20 vehicle designs for a project, and some were added that were not even in the script before because they were completely unique and new ideas, although they followed the same form language we were using in the film. So there's an opportunity when you're able to do that type of design where if the director and producers like an idea or a concept you've done enough, it can go on to inspire new sequences and new shots in the film as well, which is always really fun to be able to contribute that way.
Yeah, is that one of the biggest kicks? That actually one idea, you say, okay, I had this strange fruit. It started when I didn't have an idea, then I saw this fruit in a refrigerator, and then actually you see Avatar 3, and you see your strange fruit driving by in a huge cinema.
Yeah, that's incredible. If something like that were to happen, it'd be amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's those moments when you're able to really influence more than just a task or a challenge you're given, but to play a larger role in a project. That's what I really enjoy at the end of the day. It's being able to really see a design through from the beginning, or even add something more of yourself to the end product. It's very, very. I'm very grateful when I get responsibilities and outcomes like that.
Okay, and I understand, and that's a little bit what I hear from you so far. It's like doing proper research, understanding the basic principles and the rules, that it's part of your muscle memory, and also understand what form language can mean for world building and storytelling. That's also the way to get the better or you are better in contributing to a movie and designing a movie, right?
Research is
otherwise it's so simple. What you're seeing a lot is that there's a lot of copying in the industry, and a lot of things looks the same. But
Absolutely.
if you really follow the sources, so like you're gaining your own sources instead of looking at what other people are doing, but you're trying to find different sources, you will become to more original ideas. Is that a little bit the conclusion?
Yeah, it's 100% agreed. It's, it could be studying books, it could be traveling, it could be life experience, it could be just going on websites that are different and out of your normal routine. Any of those are good contributions towards getting better research, because the last place you want to be is using the same ideas over and over again and regurgitating, like you said. Completely agree with you there.
Yeah. Hey, and then the next step, you are doing like this form language, and then you're filling it in with light and giving it atmosphere. Is that like also a kind of testing out? It's also
these are testing chambers. Yeah, that was for a similar project that we showed before. It's these sort of sketches are all done just to. They're not to contribute necessarily to the final image. They're more to explore how can I incorporate that form language into a scene. What are the camera shots that I want to show? What are the locations that I really want to test out? So it's a way to build a bunch of ideas up before you have to really spend a lot of time in the refinement phase. For me, doing sketches like this is extremely important, just because you don't have to commit to an idea yet. You can have a lot of fun, a lot of exploration. You could test new ideas that you're having, and it also allows for that creative exploration where something unexpected could come up that you weren't thinking of before. You're able to test out a new camera angle or a new type of shot that you weren't considering at the beginning. And those types of black and white color explorations are really valuable to me, and I use them all the time on all sorts of projects.
Okay, so these are like tests in getting like also the more spatial experience around
it's
it.
Like
making this
lighting, functionality, composition, all sorts of things. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's this modeling kind of setup.
Yeah.
Is that normally following, or is it sometimes goes hand in hand, or?
So it depends on the process I'm using for the individual piece. This is pretty similar to what I would do nowadays, which is after I have a good idea of the individual pieces of architecture in a scene, the individual assets, I will go and model those either in VR or traditionally to lay out in detail what that space is going to look like. And this model up here is just one of, say, 20 or so that I did for this scene. But being able to have those now in a 3D space, very realized, it really helps to be able to have those in the 3D program to play with the positioning, understand the story and the vision that you're trying to sell a lot better. Because in a 2D realm, when you're just trying to sketch those out and trying to understand, okay, what is the actual form I'm going with here? You're not able to really move things on the go. But after you have that locked down, after you know, okay, these are the pieces of architecture that I'm going to be building, and you actually build those, it opens up a lot of a wider range of possibility down the road. You're able to use those in different images. You're able to build a story out of them. You're able to build several keyframes. So it becomes a very efficient way of building a universe for yourself. So if you're developing an IP or a project later on, and especially in film, 3D is used constantly. I mean, I haven't worked on a film in years where you haven't been able to be fluent with 3D. Everybody has to be able to build assets like this and be able to move them around to help with pre-visualization. So building stuff like this is really important in my workflow for sure. But it's also a part of the process that I really enjoy because it's really bringing to life that initial idea you had in your head or as a sketch.
And I see also here like with more like strange shapes and colors and like different kind of bigger shapes and then making smaller details. And then do you make a lot of these kind of I don't know the English word for it, sorry, different models, like different types of these?
Yeah, well, I'll do tons of these for every project. It depends how long I'm given, but most of the time I'll do a lot of these. Even if I don't end up showing them to the client, I usually will, but it's just to kind of get a frame of mind around something. There's sometimes, though, what I will say recently, where if you already know the parameters for a project and you don't need to do that type of exploration, I could just jump into the final keyframe. I'm able to picture it in my head what it's going to look like. But most of the time, I really love doing these sorts of explorations because it gives a sense to what the world could be. You're kind of exploring a very wide range of options before you hone down into something that's more specific. And for me, like exploring plants, architecture, landscape, all those things are very freeing for me and very, very enjoyable. And I think most of the clients I work with really love to be presented with those sorts of options as well.
Great. Hey, and then here we already discussed the bigger picture, like the form language, and then you're creating like a lot of these kind of assets. And for those who are watching, of course, this is all kind of still in the sketching phase, right? We're not doing the final renders. This is all what you do, like just exploring shapes and training you to get into the form language you want to for this project.
Absolutely.
So these are things. This is for. Can you tell us a little bit what this is?
Like so these were all sculpted in Adobe Medium. So it's all been done in Oculus in VR. And it's a very fast way of concepting, similar to sketching, but in a 3D area, in a 3D zone. So these were all for, I believe it was the artist Seven Lions. He wanted me to do some world building for his IP and universe. And he wanted these different altars, these kind of alien artifacts, alien altars for some interiors we were building. And this is kind of how I concepted it out. I would, quickly do some 3D sketches to kind of show what are the religious symbologies for this alien culture, this different sort of universe. And this was a very fast way to represent them. So the sculpts themselves would just take me, maybe 10 minutes or so to quickly sculpt it out. And then to render and texture over them, you end up being able to do a lot of variations very, very quickly. And for world building, I think that's very, very important, is to be able to ideate and explore a very wide range like this.
Yeah, that already gives you so much information, right?
Yeah,
So with
definitely.
doing it in VR, it also gives you immediately 3D spatial experience around it,
Yeah,
but you can also
yeah,
play immediately with like kind of a texturing approach to it, but
yeah,
also the light, it gives you so much information that you can use in your
yeah.
paintings, right?
I would say that it gives you a bit of a rougher approach than if you were to model it traditionally,
Yeah.
but you're able to visualize your idea much faster. So as long as these things aren't going to be in the center, like dead on center compositions, if they're just props in a large room, it works perfectly for that because it gives you the ability to do these types of explorations much faster than any other workflow you could have used.
Yeah, and it is also good to design it yourself instead of watching imagery on image of on internet, like stock photo
Absolutely.
or whatever. You're creating your
Yeah.
own assets libraries that you can use in a much
100%.
much more. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah. So something like this would take a little bit longer to create because this was based on a 2D sketch I had done for a city design, and something like this would take a little bit longer than the other ones we showed. I'd probably spend 30 minutes, 40 minutes on a column like this, just getting the detail and texture created. But then you can use it in so many different compositions afterwards, and it becomes like a small piece of a world you've built that you can always go back and reference as much as you want. Yeah.
what I also as I see like in your development, but maybe I'm wrong, but then you have to say it, of course. You're really trying to blend in colors. It almost looks like
Mhm.
oil kind of texturing. You're blending so that it's not like defined, okay, this has this color, but
Yes.
you're using like much more yeah, oil kind of texturing.
I love combining and overlapping different hues and different textures to create this sense of depth to the color. So instead of just throwing one texture, I try to experiment by doing, 10 or 12, really layering them together. And instead of just having something be pink, having it be five different colors kind of stitched together with little, subtle pops of color throughout them. That's something that's really valuable to me, and it's something that I really love exploring in terms of the textural detail. It brings out a sort of life and energy to whatever you're designing, whether it be architecture or props or characters, that makes it feel more alive than how I would normally traditionally paint something. And it does simulate kind of a more traditional feeling of getting an underpainting and stacking the different brushstrokes over time on something. Yeah,
So it
it's probably
gives
one of my favorite ways of working.
yeah much more layerness in it. So it
Yeah.
actually feels much organically, and also that's why much more tactile almost.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it works really great for organic surfaces because it gives you the feeling that there's something happening like almost beneath the skin, like it's growing or alive in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, here is the example of the assets that you just were
Yeah.
talking about.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah. So this was the final piece. I would use, there's a lot of programs that go into a final image like this. I use Gravity Sketch and Adobe Medium, Cinema 4D, Octane to render it, and then I would paint over it. So it's kind of like assembling all those individual pieces together to create, a story of, okay, this is a marketplace that has fallen away and crumbled over time that's supported by these ancient root structures, and it's through all that development I did earlier that lets me build a final scene like this. All that those other steps are kind of like different splits in the road where if I had gone with one of those other sketches, this end piece could be completely different. But it's what I ended up deciding to focus on when I knew this would be, the story I was trying to tell.
yeah, so these are like the columns you just talked about,
Yeah.
the shapes of the market and everything comes together. And every little asset you try to tell a little story.
Yeah, I would love to do that. I try to make it seem, especially with pieces like this that are from my IP Blue Valley, that everything is related, everything is grown, it's all organic, and in the way that everything comes from either the ground or earth or some animal. It's all been, none of it has been manufactured. It's all been kind of grown and done naturally over time. And that's one of my favorite parts of this universe, is to really tell the story of how the people in it really build things, is that they have this kind of harmonious connection with nature where they are able to grow things and really repurpose things. Um, so, for instance, this image, it's about a farmstead that used to exist in another civilization. After a war, it was reclaimed and then expanded by growing the shell inside of it that now becomes a more complete building that's kind of harmonious. So telling those kind of stories with architecture, that's something that I'm really passionate about and really is important to me.
Yeah, and then I stumble upon also a lot of these color tests, and you actually also see like some of the photo bashing in it.
Yeah.
I see like a lot of research goes into every image. Like the image that you just show, how much time does it cost, Finian, actually?
I mean, so the recent image that we just pulled up about the farmstead, something like that was a bit less than the image before that with the columns, and mainly because I already had a very complete understanding of what I was trying to do. I would say these sorts of sketches we have on the screen now, I tend to do them more when I don't know where I'm going to be going with an image, where I really just want to try something and explore. Maybe I don't have an idea yet. Maybe it's something that is completely just vague for me. But taking that time to do those extra sketches, that helps solidify the idea in my head. But if I already know exactly what the final image is, then I do sometimes just skip that process. There's a lot of research that goes into it, as always, with reference gathering, with exploration. I'll often, ask friends of mine as well, like, hey, what do you think about this image? Those are all very important steps to it. But at the same time, I try not to waste time. I try to only do these sketches that I feel are going to be necessary and helpful for the creative process in the end.
Yeah, because for those who just never worked in the industry before, they don't have a clue, but they like drawing and they like concept art. And I'm a teacher, so I know that sometimes people really don't know how it works in the industry. If you have to design something, like how many time? If I see so many research in it, of course, this is also training for yourself, but you're saying, okay, I got this assignment, I got this brief. Can you take a week for it to explore some sketches?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it depends on the client and project. Working in film is very fast paced. Oftentimes, I'll have to do 2 to 3 keyframes a day, and that's like fully built out with, architecture, could be vehicles, could be props. So that is so fast paced that there isn't as much time usually to do those sorts of sketches. Oftentimes with video games, though, and game design, you do have a lot more time to do those important research steps and being able to build the universe one step at a time. Oftentimes with film productions, everything is at such a fast pace, especially in the middle area, like once you're leaving pre-production, that the script is constantly changing. You're constantly designing new areas to show on a daily basis. It's really like a daily check-in. I would say in film where that process happens, where it's more relaxed, is if the film is very early, if it's in a pitch stage, or maybe they just got the first versions of the script. That's when you get that time to do that creative exploration. But oftentimes you would not have. I would say it's pretty rare to have a week to do an image in film. In games, you could be on an image for weeks sometimes, but in film, usually it has to be pretty quick. You'd probably have a couple days at most for an image.
Yeah. Hey, and when you are designing these kind of worlds, do you always have in mind that some people should recreate it in a way, so that you can say, okay, I designed this hugely complex structures, and then you think, okay, I'm going to make a lot of animators and are production people happy with this design, or do you also have in mind for, okay, is this doable?
Again, it really depends on the project. When, like, say you get a script segment and you can sometimes get told, okay, we have a budget of maybe 2 million to build this set. If you've been in the industry long enough to know what the costs of certain types of construction are, what the costs of certain CGI shots are, you can kind of gauge yourself how much you're able to fit into that set design. And that's something I have to do regularly, is think about, I have to consider the budget of how much they have to build that set, and the budget of how large of a room can I design? How many things can I design for this if it has to be built in real life? With my personal work, absolutely not. I don't ever think about that. I just because no one's, if I build it in the future, if I hire people to build it, that's on me. But for professional work for the industry, you do have to be mindful, for games, for film, you have to be mindful if you're doing an animation, how much will that animation cost to actually, like you said, become something that's final and developed. If you're designing a room that has to be built, or a machine, or something organic, that sculptors actually have to plaster and mold and build it for a shot, you do have to be wary, how much texture am I putting in this? How large am I making it? Because you don't want to present something to the director that is so wide and out of scope, because it's kind of wasted time in that case. You want to be smart about how you can cut down on costs. Absolutely.
So, okay, yeah, but because I never heard so far somebody talking about that in a presentation, that you have this calculation in your mind as well. But that takes some experience, right? Because
it does take experience.
I would never know. I saw like some incredible sets of Star Wars, of course, and I don't think they have like, yeah, maybe now they have difficult times, but they have like money to build great sets.
I think it depends what stage you're in on the process. So say you're in very early pre-production and you're just concepting things for the first time. You have no idea what a world looks like. You could be doing mood sketches, architecture sketches. At that phase, it doesn't really matter what you're designing. That's only to build something that looks incredible and inspiring. But as you get closer to production, as things get tighter and tighter, and you have to really go into detail about what these sets look like, art directors start coming in, set designers, set builders start coming in, and you have to understand how that design you did is going to get built. It could be something that's incredible looking, but if they have to find a way to physically make it into a space that you'll have actors walk through and camera people there shooting it, that has to be figured out by someone. And it's not always the concept artist's responsibility, but if you're able to talk on those terms with directors and production designers, it definitely helps a lot, because you're saving everybody a lot of money and time. You're able to really understand the specifics of how construction works and how large you can go with a set design. Oftentimes when you're on these big productions, you'll have 10, 12 concept artists all painting different locations. But if those locations don't match up to a final product, who's going to really sew those together and make sure that they're all cohesive? That is oftentimes a big problem in productions that people have to be aware of and then have to fix, as you get closer to a production deadline.
All right.
Yeah.
And then you are also, but you're really, I think, good, efficient design makes a lot of people happy then in the industry.
Yeah,
so you can be like
a
good concept artist, but if you really are trained in calculating what it's needed to actually also execute it, because sometimes you see great designs, really bad execution.
Yes.
Like if they are not able to actually make the visual effects happen in the way it's intended by the concept artist, it can look really lame. So
I do want to clarify, I'm not saying that you have to know exactly how much a piece of wood is going to cost, or a certain light, but just not like if they're asking for a certain dimension of a space, it's just you don't want to go too far crazy, too far out. You want to be able to know that, okay, this is within the realm to produce something. And yes, having that ability to be able to judge, and it's part of it is common sense, and part of it is just getting a very clear understanding beforehand. That can go a very long way, especially now that in the industry, concept artists are essentially branching out and taking more roles than just doing the art. You're doing the asset creation, you're doing 3D modeling, you can be doing art direction sometimes. The roles are expanding with the technology that is available to us now, and it's only going to keep expanding. You're going to be asked and required to do more every year than you were the year prior. And that's something that I've been very aware of recently, is that if you have the skill set to do it, and there are people that do have the skill sets out there, you will be asked to stay on for more of the production, to see more of it through to the end. And whereas there used to be more and more artists on a production doing specialized tasks, now the technologies and programs we have available to us are helping artists being able to take on more different parts of a project at once, and really to help make the process more efficient for everybody.
Yeah, and is that also a reason why VR is taking off so rapidly in
Absolutely.
the concept art scene? Because then actually you're not only making a 2D representation as an artist impression of how it could look like, but by using these kind of tools, you almost molding, sculpting the scene that can be reproduced.
Oh yeah,
exactly,
absolutely.
Right? So you can actually
absolutely. Yeah, VR, it's used in so many ways now, from having VR simulation stages. Most stages now are these very interesting and new motion capture stages that have LED screens completely in 180 degrees that project the visual effects and the post shots onto the screen while you're filming. And it's a whole new workflow that just started up a couple of years ago with The Mandalorian, and now is within pretty much every Marvel, Lucasfilm, Disney production, where they use these new types of capture stages. That technology combined with VR, Unreal, all of that is bringing all these new methodologies to the forefront, where it's very helpful if you're able to adapt and fit into that workflow.
All right. Yeah, and in the meantime, I show also like a lot of work, because I have like this disc full of great work, so I'm also illustrating it. And this was one also like what you're just mentioning in the talk about like blending all those colors and like stacking them all together to get this like really nice organic touch to it. These are also more, I can imagine this is like a lot of work. There's also, of course, a different, what you're just mentioning, working for games or working for features.
There's a huge difference now,
Yeah, because like everything can be done in 3D, and rendering is like the sky is the limit or that actually has to work on set. That's a different thing. There's much more to be calculated. You have to take, charge with a lot of other things. Is there like, I don't want to make you say to make a choice, but what do you prefer? Do you like to think about limitless possibilities, or do you also like to solve the puzzle for a feature film and that combination of the real and the fake?
I would say that my favorite aspect of creation would be the painting part of it, if I was just to boil it down to what my favorite part is. But at my core, I'm also a designer. I love imagining new things and creating things that work, solving problems. And 3D is very, very helpful for that. 3D and VR can open up so much in terms of those design solutions and design possibilities. That's one of the reasons I really love those areas. Painting is great for the expression of the soul, for being, for really loving your craft and feeling a connection to your craft as an artist. And the 3D and VR side is much more of a love for the design and the technical side and the problem solving side. And I like them both. I really love them both. I would say if I had to choose one, it'd be the painting though, just because you can be so expressive with it. You can be so, you can just show your love and appreciation for so many things. You can focus on the light and the aesthetic and the color and the beauty of something. And I really, really appreciate when I'm able to also do that for productions. So these days, I think it's important to also, as artists, to be able to push to do that more, to be able to push to have the ability to paint on productions. Because I think there is a danger that as designers, especially in the film industry, that everything becomes so 3D that there's sometimes you don't even like touch a paintbrush on a project. And you really want to be able to, at least for myself, I really want to be able to use that workflow as well within the process, and try to put in the painting and the art and love of the craft into every project I can be a part of.
I also saw this one. This is like really also comes together. This was like also made for Adobe, a project.
This was for Adobe. It was to showcase Medium specifically. So it was a commission to design a big VR scene. So this was all done in VR, and it was all completely sculpted by hand. So except for the people, there were some assets that I painted over. But the whole scene was like sculpted and recorded for Adobe. And it was a really, really fun project because I was able to produce it for my own IP as well.
And this was also inspired by the cliffs of Moher, right?
Yeah, this was after a trip I did to Ireland to see my family there, and I had basically taken a ton of photography of the cliffs of Moher in Ireland, and I thought even though the worlds are so different, I thought I would make a Dune-inspired piece. So this was for a Fremen Siege, and I did an interior for this as well. And I was thinking, okay, what if I bring in these textures from a completely different area of the world that are still very intriguing, organic, and beautiful to me, and incorporate those into a completely different concept. That was really, really fun to work on.
And you constantly take pictures. Is it like, do you have like a huge library, like hard disks full of capturing
terabyte? Yeah, like a very, very huge amount of reference. And I like to keep it very organized too. You know, I started really getting deep into reference collection when I was 18 or so. And everything is organized within a ton of different categories. It's extremely well organized. And it helps me whenever I start a new project because I will have instantly, you know, thousands upon thousands of photos that I've taken, photos that my friends have taken, things I found online that are already, you know, great ideas ready to go essentially. And I think that having that reference is very, very important to any artist. Every artist I know has that sort of expansive reference library. But absolutely, whenever I'm on a trip or whenever I'm traveling, I take around a camera. I try to take as many photos as I can. And all the trips I've taken to different countries have extensively influenced all of my artwork, both personal and professional. And oftentimes I will incorporate, you know, ideas that I've had on these trips into a film or a video game project and bring them to life through those projects.
And is it still fun with you to go to a holiday? Because I always have a fight with my girlfriend that I'm staying much behind because I'm taking a picture out of it. But you're picturing every plant, every little marble, or is it like...
It's incredibly fun for me. I mean, there was over a year where I just traveled around the world and worked, and I was freelancing. I lived in London as a home base, but I spent a month in Portugal, a month in France, a month in Italy and Spain, and that was very incredible for me. And I'm absolutely going to do it again when the world opens up. It's one of the most inspiring things you can do, and you get to meet so many other digital artists and learn so much about the world. And at the end of the day, being a concept artist, you're going to be a much better and more well-rounded person if you know more about history, if you know more about other cultures, if you know more about the world at large, rather than being someone that is just behind their computer screen the whole day. If you're able to go out and explore and learn more about the world, that will show in the designs that you do. It's going to be adding a sophistication and an understanding of how the world works and about all these different cultures that you've seen. That all in the end feeds into what you do as a part of your daily process.
That's great to hear. Yeah, that's also one of the big profits of working remotely, right?
Yeah.
So that if you are able to set up your studio everywhere, in every apartment all over the world, and it's the best combination to travel and fill up your reference libraries.
Absolutely.
But also to gain what you just mentioned, the culture, the vibe of a city, of different cultures. So I think it's a must for concept artists actually to not be sitting in a fixed kind of studio environment all the time at the same place, right? Because that's great. Now I understand you much better during this conversation, Finian. We were already discussing traveling, but now I also
we were having a good time earlier too. Yeah.
I hope. I'm really learn a lot from you, and it's interesting to hear about your approach and how you look upon things. This is like also they also stung out in a way because of the organically shaped, the light, the kind of what you're looking for during making these concepts.
There's a certain grossness to this too, and it's interesting because I don't do too much horror imagery, but this was actually one of the first projects for Terraform Studios. The author Christopher Paolini, he wrote the book Eragon, if you've ever heard of it, the Eragon series. He approached us with defining essentially all the world's keyframes, vehicles for his upcoming film, To Sleep in a Sea of Stars. It's a novel that's in the process of becoming a film. The script is being written right now. And he approached the studio about defining all these things for him. So this was a concept called, it's essentially these race of beings called the Jellies and the Nightmares, which the Nightmares are this kind of distorted, infectious race. It's almost like a disease that latches on to other life forms and then mutates them and extrapolates them. So in this instance, if it was able to find somewhere a femur or a bone, it then latches onto that and reproduces and tries to recreate what that would be in a really horrid, disturbing way. So these images were inspired and created for the visual development of his novel. This one here being the nightmare version of another creature, another alien that is in his universe. And for stuff like this, absolutely, it's really fun to play with all those different textures and colors, material indications, and it's a very unique concept of this sort of life form that is taking over, almost zombifying these alien species, and how would that look if they're taking that organic tissue and mutating it? So it's not something that I normally get a chance to explore, and it's a very weird and creepy idea. And it was really, really fun to help the director kind of visualize all of those different concepts with my team.
It sometimes exists, right? It's called Metalogus maligma.
Mm. Oh yeah, okay, cool. I don't know that.
It can happen. It can happen also in human tissue. Like if you are like having a bullet or something, or in your skin, or you have like iron for when you had like a fracture, it actually can flow through your body and take other shapes. Yeah.
Oh gosh. Okay.
It's a nice film. You should check it out. It's called Metalogus maligma from Floris Kijk. It's a Dutch
cool. Check it out. Is it going to scare me, Leon?
No, don't be afraid. No.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I also stumbled upon like this really detailed, almost merge kind of commercial shots. This is like I also saw like these ones that you did for the Pacific Rim projects.
Yeah.
I was wondering like how does this work, because this almost looks like the frame in a film, etc. So
So these were done when I was working at Industrial Light and Magic. It was the start of my career in film. And it was really, really fun to work there. They have such an incredible team of designers and art directors. And it's funny, the image you pulled up, the first image, was the absolute first image I did when I was working there. So I remember sitting down in my computer and being tasked with doing this image for like a meeting later that day. So how this works for something like this is there's a lot of different steps involved. You get assets from the team. There were other artists at ILM assisting me, art directors assisting, where we had some buildings already modeled and maybe some parts of the creature that were modeled, and then I would have to ZBrush and design more on top of that. So you essentially work with the team to create images like this. You pose them, you light them, you try different angles out. But the most important thing when you're working at a VFX house like ILM is to represent what the final frame would look like. So you do want to give a very realistic interpretation, and it's quite different than, say, normal pre-production art. Because in pre-production art, you're trying to explore the possibilities of ideas that could happen. And in VFX, with these sorts of shots, you're trying to define the exact shot as it would appear on film. So with stuff like this, it's more about getting something as realistic and as detailed as possible and staying true to what the final look of the film would be. Whereas in the pre-production art department world, it's more about creativity and exploring what more of the original ideas for something could be, what the most interesting idea is. Where in the VFX world, it's more about what's the best shot to show the story moment. What's the most interesting shot, composition, lighting, stuff like that? How can we make it look as real as possible, as interesting as possible within the timeline that we have?
Hey, and you said you worked at ILM,
yes.
and now you started your own studio. What's the most important lesson you learned while working in that kind of environment? because I can imagine you work with the very best in the film industry, because you not start working at ILM by accident.
Yeah, I had some amazing mentors there, incredible designers. And yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot of things that I've learned both working there and then also starting my own studio. They've been completely different experiences, obviously. But for me, working in the film industry, I think time management is the most key thing. It's being able to understand how long something will take you, and be able to break it down into little bite-sized chunks, being able to understand in your head what the schedule will be and how fast you can get a concept out. The other things are having a focus on quality, a focus on always delivering really good work and not being lazy about the work you produce. Like really trying to understand how you can consistently make your images better. Because in the film industry, that's always what they're looking for. They're always looking for the next best idea, the most inspiring image you can possibly get. So being able to be completely focused on getting something that's very good quality over everything else, and being able to be focused on speed as well, being able to focus and do as like a ton of explorations. Those are all really important things. I mean, it's a very competitive industry and people are always learning, people always, discovering new tools, new programs. I mean, even myself, I've been in the industry for a long time. We get a lot of work at the studio, but I'm still learning new stuff. I'm still keeping up, still trying to understand how I can improve. And that is something that never stops. It's not something, and it shouldn't. As an artist, all artists should be trying to get better and understand how they can keep moving forward with their career and passion. And, working at ILM really taught me a lot of that stuff. It was like understanding the dedication it takes for this industry, and understanding, a love for the craft and a love for improvement and becoming a better designer and a better person. So I'd say those are the like top three things that I think are really important lessons that I learned when I was working there.
All right. Yeah. In the meantime, I show also different stills of films and features you worked with. This is from Ad Astra, and I showed already some other ones. Also, it's a different thing was also your work that you did for The Lion King. These are like also more character-based kind of approaches. That's also the reason why I chose them. This is like a different cup of coffee. You just mentioned like with the more alienated zombie kind of structures. This is also like living creatures. Normally, you do a lot of architecture and environments. How was it for you to work with creatures and with character
design?
So
fun. It was very fun. It was definitely a challenge. It's not something that you see very often in my portfolio, working with, animals, for instance. But The Lion King was such a dream project to work on, because we were essentially designing key moments from the original film, and like thinking of like, back when I was a kid watching this for the first time, what were some of the moments that I really enjoyed and how would I represent them in a live action capacity. And so that was incredibly fun for me, because you get to focus on the beauty of a shot, the nature of it, the incredible light and atmosphere, landscape. All that stuff was so fun for me, and such a dream to be able to assist with and work on. So for me, that was an incredible experience. I got to design something like 30 or 40 keyframes for it. And yeah, it was a really fantastic time. You get to play with emotion, play with, funny gags, funny things that are happening. And it was just a really good time. It was a good experience. It wasn't, there's oftentimes on productions, there are issues that pop up with deadlines or, different sorts of complications. But with this, there was none. It was really just about having a lot of fun exploring some really fantastic imagery that was inspirational to us as artists. So it was a really, really great project to work on.
And is it something you would like to do more in the future, working with creatures and making this kind of shots?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely have recently, so I probably won't be able to show it for a while, but I've done more of that since. And it has been a really fun experience. I love being able to explore a wide variety of design. And I think that the more different things you can work on, the better you'll be as a designer, because you're expanding out into other areas. You're learning more about different professions. Yeah.
And this is also a project from WandaVision, if I'm correct?
Yes. Yeah. WandaVision was fantastic to work on as well. Yeah, I had always wanted to work on Marvel shows, and since I've done this, I've worked on a few other Marvel shows, but WandaVision was the first Marvel production I worked on, and it was a fantastic time. It was my first time being on the Marvel lot in Burbank, so they have this huge, kind of paradise of a studio there that has tons of different cafeterias. It has beautiful parks on the grounds, and you get to work and collaborate with so many other amazing designers. It was just a really fantastic experience. So, WandaVision was really fun, especially, getting to work with such different subject matter. I still haven't uploaded a lot of my work for the project that I probably will upload sometime soon. But it was a really great time working on that as well. It was because it was just all pretty different as well to what I would normally do. And it was a lot of fun trying to understand how we're going to actually build the sets for the TV series. And just as a fan of Marvel projects myself, I was very giddy to work on it throughout the days. Yeah.
All right. So we discussed the why you came in the industry, like the love for painting, and that it's also like one of the, if you have to boil it down, it's the digital painting that makes you ticks in that sense. We were discussing also like the difference sometimes with working in an efficient way for features to like what the difference is with game. And we were talking about form language, texturing, setups. I'm so happy that you were sharing all this different kind of knowledge and topics with us. And I know we still have like tons of stuff that you didn't upload it yet, or projects that you're working on, and that we still have to discuss in the future. So hopefully, Finian, you will be back soon when the world's opening up and you can start traveling again. And
I would love to.
And build up your library of assets again. And hopefully you're back in the Netherlands or in Berlin to join us again in the art department. And
it'd be fantastic.
I'm talking like the whole audience. Thank you so much for being with us and sharing so much important, relevant insights.
Thank you.
I'm really happy.
I hope it helps. I hope it helps. And I'm honored to be here. Thanks so much, Leon.
Thank you too, Finian. Hey, and also thank you so much for joining us again at Playgrounds TV. Hopefully I see you next time. Every 2 weeks there's a new episode. And I hope you'll be back soon, and see you in the chat. Have a great evening, and thank you so much for joining us. See ya. Bye. Nice.